Hello and welcome to wjlive. I'm your host Olivia Brown, and our show sponsored by Pure Bulk starts right now. Today we have Randy DeSoto. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Today we're going to be talking about the results from last night's primaries, and it was very exciting to see everybody that won and their results. We had 3 different places. There was New York, there was Florida, there was Oklahoma. It was interesting to see all the different races and how they turned out. What were some of the key people that you saw, Randy?
Well, I liked, of course, in Florida, it's interesting. Chris won because he's the former governor. We'll talk about him in a little bit. And then Nadler, I was curious how that was going to turn out between the two incumbents and chairman, Democrats. In New York City. And so those are two of the ones that, and then the special election, I was curious if the Molinari was going to be able to win in that race, but he came up a little short. So.
And we're seeing here Kat Kammick. She was it was a cool story that she has. She was homeless originally. Now she's the youngest woman in Congress. It's amazing to see. She won very handily by 85% of the vote. And then we also had Anna Paulina, who both of these people are in Florida, and both were endorsed by President Trump. Anna Paulina Luna, she won by 45% of the vote. And it's super interesting to see how the Trump effect again played out. And he's really been prevailing with almost every candidate that he's endorsed. And in these primaries last night, it was 15 out of 15 that he endorsed, which won.
Yeah, same here in Arizona. He had a clean sweep. The statistics are, and they've compared it to past elections, where Trump, he's at 92% now of his endorsements. So much for the idea that Trump is like passe or won't be playing a major part in the party. And there was some of that talk, in 2021 that he's, the party's going to go in a different direction and he won't have a big role, but he's had a huge role in these primaries. And now, of course, we want to see those candidates then go and take it on to November and win. That's what we want.
I think it's interesting, and we're going to have to see how it plays out with, yes, he is so critically important when coming to the Republican primaries, but is that going to translate into the general election?
Right.
That's what I'm really curious to see on how that plays out. And his picks in 2018 with our last midterms was a 58% rate. So it's really jumped after his presidency.
Yeah, and he's been good. He's been going to, of course, here in Arizona, he was out twice so far during this primary season. And then he's been going and doing these different rallies, and that, brings people together, energizes the vote. And really, when he puts his stamp on, that's pretty much a done deal. The only times he's not won per se is like an incumbent governor like Kemp in Georgia, where they've got their record and people have, decided what they think about him. And so there have been a few instances like that where the incumbent governor our incumbent candidate was able to overcome that. But of course, we all know what happened to all those impeachment voters. They've been mostly kicked out. And so I've kind of liked seeing that. That's good stuff. But.
They've been wiped out. So Anna Paulina Luna, she originally 2 years ago ran against Charlie Crist, who is now running against Governor DeSantis as a Democrat. But he has a very interesting backstory.
Yeah, I saw Newt Gingrich talking about him last night on Fox News, I guess, and he was saying how he met Chris back in '84 at the Reagan's Republican convention. So I think Chris was a delegate. Maybe they both were delegates to the convention. Chris was in the state Senate at that time, as I recall, Newt said.
As a Republican.
Yeah, as a Republican. And then he stayed a Republican and then, successfully ran for the governor in '06 and won. And by all accounts, it seems like he did an okay job down there, a fine job. And then he tried to beat Rubio then in that Tea Party 2010 election.
Yes.
And Rubio won. He had the energy in that race. And then Chris, I don't know the whole backstory, but it seems like he kind of got upset with the party. And then he ran as an independent, but he was not able to win in the general. He stayed an independent, and then he became a Democrat and endorsed Obama in 2012. And eventually he was able, and he ran for governor again against Rick Scott, who won.
Yep.
It was a close race. But then Chris ran in 2016 for Congress and won, and now he's still in Congress, but he's running to be governor. So it'll be a former governor against a current governor. So, but DeSantis is very popular. So I think that DeSantis, especially given how the Republicans have gained so much in that state, DeSantis should be able to prevail.
This is so interesting, seeing how it's going to play out. And specifically with him, I'm seeing, wow, what a shift from being a Republican to an independent to now a Democrat. And he's really stuck by the Democrats since then and has really moved more to the radical left. And he actually did something super hypocritical right before he won the election and right after the election. Let's look at this.
Those who support the governor should stay with him and vote for him, and I don't want your vote. If you have that hate in your heart, keep it there. I want the vote of the people of Florida who care about our state. Good Democrats, good independents, good Republicans. Unify with this ticket. Unify with Val Demings and Charlie Crist. Unify with us. Those who are haters, you're going to go off in your own world.
He says originally, DeSantis fights to divide. I want to unite people. And then, nope, next day he says, oh, I don't want your vote if you are going to be voting for DeSantis.
Yeah, I guess this is a technique to try to make him a Trump-like person, to make DeSantis a Trump-like, the unacceptable choice, which is the Democrats' strategy a lot. They try to say, oh, you can't vote for this person because they're so bad.
Yes.
And so the big story earlier this summer was the Don't Say Gay bill, which is, that's how the Democrats
Which
defined it.
didn't even have the word gay in it.
Yeah. That's how the Democrats defined it.
Yes.
It was the parental rights bill.
Yes.
And so it had this radical notion that K through 3 third graders should not be taught about sexual, identity, gender identity, and those sort of issues. And I remember in one of the news conferences, DeSantis had an illustration from one of these books that they're wanting.
Yeah,
they were using.
It was outrageous.
Yeah, I know, showing the kids their genitalia and stuff like that. And I'm like, is most normal people can agree, if we're talking about people coming together, that young kids don't need to be taught that stuff. I mean, my Lord, as I recall, like your teenage years is kind of when those sort of things.
Be the birds and the bees.
Yeah. You start kind of, kids are just kids. Let kids be kids. Yeah. And of course, we don't want people bullied or anything like that. That's one of the left's comebacks, is we want people to teach acceptance and stuff, even at that early age. And obviously the issue is we don't want people bullied. That's the issue, and it's not teaching these sort of things.
The children nowadays do not have the same childhood that you experienced, that I experienced, and I even experienced it a little bit more. You probably had a better, even like less technology
there were
childhood than I did. And so I think every generation we are more exposed. We are seeing all these things that we probably shouldn't be seeing, learning all these different things. And actually, that was a main issue that in Florida people ran on and were very successful. So DeSantis, he endorsed 30 school board candidates, and over 21 out of 30 won their races, and they unseated incumbents that were liberal.
Yeah, no, it's impressive. And this is something we've seen around the country, in Texas and even California and different places like that, where, you've reached the parents' threshold. It's just like they can't deal with these radical concepts. Even Democrats can't, in many cases, can't deal with the concepts. So DeSantis has been very out front on the issue of education, and they've had multiple pieces of legislation go through in the last months, dealing with that, even bringing veterans, encouraging veterans to become teachers as they're finishing.
I saw that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, as they're finishing up their college. They have to have so many credits in. And so it's just a good way to bring veterans in and potentially help with the school security and, because Florida also allows people to have, people who've gone through training to have guns. So the idea is that if you have a well-trained person there, that potentially you don't have school shootings like down at Parkland.
Yearbook has a variety of healthy supplements that can help push you through your workout or your work week. Go to purebulk.com and enter code wjlive to get a 15% discount on your entire order. Another person that we saw win was Markwayne Mullin in Oklahoma. He was a Senate candidate, and he won pretty handily, and is, a lot of people say, going to win in the general as well to keep Oklahoma red. That is very encouraging. And New York, we saw, like you mentioned, Nadler. Was interesting to see that. We had Mike Lawler, who we actually had on this show about a week and a half ago, and he won his race. And that was very exciting. Congratulations, Mike. We're going to show a little flashback from when we talked to Mike. Going back to your opponent, Baloney. So he was actually very recently in the news for a controversial ad that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, they boosted a Republican in Michigan. And the tactic behind this is that they wanted to boost somebody that they saw as more of a far right because they thought that person might not win, and they're boosting them so that the moderate Republican who had a better chance of winning would not win. Both sides of the aisles are very upset about this. What is your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it just shows Sean Patrick Maloney for who he is, which is a partisan political hack who is disingenuous and cynical. And to use money that the DCCC raised to support the reelection of their preferred candidates and interfere in Republican primaries in attempts to try and find what they classify as the more extreme candidate. I think it just speaks volumes to the cynical nature of our politics and why people are so disgusted by it.
Also, there are more Democrats that won that are quite scary that we're seeing, and particularly Gonzalez, who won in New York. This is what she had to say after winning.
I know we're saving the speeches for a little later, but today we really proved that socialism wins. We are not going anywhere, and we will not stop until we see a socialist slate across this city.
So extremism is on the rise in the Democrats. And that's why, again, I said with the general, it'll be interesting to see, yes, Trump endorsements really work for Republicans, but is it going to translate to the general? Because we're seeing on the Democrat side, they're picking extremist candidates like Gonzalez, and then on the Republican side, we're picking people that are conservative and Trump endorsed. And it's a very distinct difference between Republican and Democrat now. It's not the same way it used to be. And unfortunately, what we just saw with Biden as our president is that he is announcing that he wants to clear $10,000 of debt for student loans for people that are making $125,000 or less.
All this means is an entire generation is now saddled with unsustainable debt in exchange for an attempt, at least, at a college degree. Many people can't qualify for a mortgage to buy a home because of the debt they continue to carry. Many of you had to leave school because the financial strain was much too high. Here's what my administration is going to do to provide more breathing room for people so they have less burdened by student debt. Using the authority Congress granted the Department of Education, we will forgive $10,000 in outstanding federal student loans. In addition, students who come from low-income families, which allowed them to qualify to receive a Pell Grant, will have their debt reduced $20,000. Both of these targeted actions are for families who need it the most. working and middle-class people, hit especially hard during the pandemic, making under $125,000 a year. If you make more than that, you don't qualify.
And really, when you think about it, yes, we want to be cognizant of this debt, but it's also being aware of the people that paid off their debt and spent hours slaving, doing 3 jobs trying to be able to pay off this debt. And now it's so unfair to them. They're not going to be able to repay that. They're not going to get any compensation from that. And so it's really interesting. And the taxpayers are actually going to be paying $329 billion. And Biden is doing this without even asking Congress.
It was interesting. Pelosi in April, Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, she said he does not have the authority to do this. And she said it again in July, because Congress is the one, of course, who has the purse strings. And so so this may I assume it will get challenged in court. And, it's interesting too, in the aftermath of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was supposed to lower deficits. That's the whole selling point, that would help with inflation. Mm-hmm. Now they're going to give that money away and more. And as Larry Summers, the former Clinton, the former Clinton,
and Obama as well.
And he worked for Obama also. Mm-hmm. He, so accurately said the American Rescue Plan would cause inflation, before they passed that, the $1.9 trillion. Now he's saying this will cause inflation. So I think we need to listen to him.
Yeah, let's show this tweet that we have from Larry Summers. I hope that the administration does not contribute to inflation macroeconomically by offering unreasonably generous student loan relief, or microeconomically by encouraging college tuition increases.
Yeah, that's the case. I mean, when you put government money into something, it incentivizes raising the price, and they will keep going and going until they reach the limit. And so all you're doing is creating 10,000 more dollars in runway, and so tuition will go up.
Exactly. And Dana Perino really nailed it on the head with what she had to say about it.
The president kept kicking the can down the road. Even he has said, this is just for politics. He said last January. Everybody is saying this is a bad idea, except for the people who are saying, no, really, come with us. Come over to the farther left side, and that will make a big deal. We'll make a big deal out of it. They're basically writing off the middle class and the blue-collar workers, completely writing them off. 47% of Americans have a 4-year degree. Only 13% have graduate degrees, but 50% of the student loan debt is held by people that have graduate degrees.
So this is really going to be actually helping the rich, because they are the ones with graduate degrees.
Yeah, they have the most student loan debt. And so, yeah, they do. There is a limit. It says you have to earn $125,000 or less, or a household has to earn $250,000 or less. But that's pretty generous. I haven't looked recently, but I think the average income in America is like $50,000, $60,000, something like that.
Yeah, and so to go all the way up to $125,000, that seems very outrageous to me that they are offering that.
It's just a payoff. It's a way to hopefully gin up a little more interest to try to stave off the red wave, to keep. I don't think they can keep the House regardless, but they're just trying to mitigate damages and maybe hold the Senate. I'd say that's what this is all about.
I don't think that it's really actually going to pay off the way that they think it is, because I was actually looking at a poll this morning that said 77% of people, their number one issue in this poll was the economy. And Clinton's strategist once famously said, it's the economy, stupid.
James Carville, right?
Yeah, James Carville. And that was in the 1992 election, and they were saying this is why we didn't win the way we wanted to. And I really think that's going to play out in these midterms as well. The economy is key, and they're adding to more inflation that is already extremely, extremely bad. And it's just hurting Americans, middle-class Americans, and now they're going to have to pay $329 billion in taxes. And he didn't even think to ask Congress about this. That's just outrageous.
So yeah, you look at it, it's either more taxes or printing more money, which causes inflation, which in effect is a tax. So you're gonna get hit by it one way or the other.
Yes, and within this last year, we have printed the most money in history in America, and that's increasing the inflation as well.
Absolutely, yeah, devalues the dollar. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. And again, this episode has been sponsored by Pure Bulk.